Good evening and thank you for joining us. The chair of the embattled Thunder Bay Police Services Board held a news conference today. She made her first comments on the reinvestigation of 16 Indigenous deaths in the city.
Kristen Oliver apologized to the affected families, and she insists the board is trying to rebuild trust in the local police service. Vasilios Bellos reports.
Chair Kristen Oliver's remarks come as there are ongoing reinvestigations into 16 cases involving Indigenous deaths in Thunder Bay. Thunder Bay Police Service is also facing complaints against senior leadership regarding discrimination and mental health of workers. Chair Oliver addressed the turmoil, remaining optimistic that trust between the community and police service can be rebuilt.
I think that with concrete policies and plans in place that demonstrate clearly to Indigenous communities, their leadership, and to their community and to the people within their community, that we are taking this seriously. I think that when you look at the recommendations and the substantial work that's already been completed, I think that's an indication there as well that we're taking these recommendations seriously and trying to rebuild that trust.
Last week, the board agreed to bring on an expert panel to review human rights complaints and mental health concerns surrounding Thunder Bay policing, further adding to those with the service under their microscope. Chair Oliver offered apologies to the families, stating that the extensive ongoing review forces them to relive tragedy.
I certainly feel for these families. They've been through a lot, and I know that the chief also stated the same thing. And when we look at the reinvestigations and the outcomes of these investigations, I think that these families have been, they continue to feel grief and sorrow because the closure just isn't there. And for that, I sincerely apologize.
Oliver's apology comes as some First Nations leaders in the north, including Anishinaabe Aski Nation Deputy Grand Chief, have called for the disbandment of the Thunder Bay Police Service. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
A second arrest has been made in connection with a shooting in the Intercity area last Tuesday that culminated in an armed standoff with the OPP near Hercote. Thunder Bay police were originally dispatched to a home on Forest Street where a male victim was found with non-life-threatening gunshot wounds. 34-year-old Andrew Plummer of Brampton was arrested later that day for attempted murder after exchanging gunfire with police on Highway 1117. Today, Thunder Bay police announced that a 25-year-old Toronto woman has now been charged with accessory after the fact. She's been remanded into custody and will appear in court tomorrow.
Officials with St. Joseph's Care Group remain optimistic that the recent provincial funding for addictions treatment beds won't take them out of the running for the larger crisis center that they've been asking for. In the meantime, the 34 new beds announced by the province this week will help and could help lay the groundwork for additional funding. Corey Nordstrom has more.
Monday's announcement sees $1.1 million going to a coalition of agencies, including St. Joseph's Care Group. It means at least 6 more addiction treatment beds for St. Joe's and helps expand services at places such as the Balmoral Center. For years, the city and local agencies have requested a new 24/7, 40-bed crisis center. St. Joseph's Care Group Vice President of Addictions and Mental Health, Nancy Black, explains that this week's funding is not a substitution for that proposal.
Anything is possible. I mean, there may be opportunities to consolidate services into one location, for example, so I don't think anything's off the table. But again, this will provide us with at least a good opportunity to demonstrate the need in a very fulsome, measured way that we'll be reporting back to our funders and to Ontario Health and the ministry so that they know exactly what we need within this particular neck of the woods.
While Black has stated that the crisis center would address many issues in the city, she recognized how much of an impact this week's funding will have.
Every single new bed in the system is sorely needed. It's a sad reality, but the needs in this region are significant, and the needs in the city of Thunder Bay and district alone are significant.
Mayor Bill Morrow has repeatedly gone to bat for the project while speaking with provincial ministers and says these groups are still able to push for more support even after this week's funding.
So that network of agencies, individually or collectively, will still be in a position to advocate on parts of the proposal that they feel are still necessary to help meet the demand in the city and in the district.
Many groups advocating for the crisis center have said it would lead to savings in other areas for the city by reducing demand on emergency services such as police and EMS. Corey Nordstrom, TBC News.
Turning to COVID-19 now, cases at the Regional Health Sciences Center increased slightly today, but the number of ICU patients has gone down. There are now 24 COVID patients being treated at the regional hospital, up from 22 on Tuesday. The number of those patients in intensive care has dipped from 7 to 6. The hospital's occupancy rate is now just under 104%, while the occupancy rate in the ICU has fallen below 73%. The Thunder Bay District Health Unit is reporting 77 new COVID cases since Monday. There are now 163 active cases. That's an increase of 7. Last week's COVID-19 incidence rate fell to 193 cases per 100,000 people, down from nearly 215 cases the week before. And the latest test positivity rate is down to 19.7%, 4/10 lower than before. Cases have increased in the Northwestern Health Unit, rising from 138 on Monday to 196. 153 of those cases, or 78% of the total, come from the Sioux Lookout Health Hub. The 7-day test positivity rate has slipped to 17.6%. Kenora MP Eric Melillo says he's proud to be one of the 313 Canadians who've been blacklisted by the Russian government and barred from entering that country. The ban includes many other parliamentarians who have spoken out against the invasion in Ukraine. The ban came the same day that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed Canada's parliament asking for more support to counter the Russian invasion. The Kenora MP is the lone member from Northwestern Ontario on the list. That also includes the Prime Minister and others. Melillo says the ban doesn't faze him at all, as he has absolutely no desire to travel to Russia.
I do see this as a badge of honor because I'm proud to stand with Ukraine and with the Ukrainian people, alongside all parliamentarians, and I think it's great to see that we're united there. And I know that these sanctions aren't going to deter us from continuing to stand up for what's right.
Nearly all of the Conservative Party was sanctioned. 116 of the 159 Liberal MPs also made the list, as did some high-ranking members of other parties. Melillo says all parties agree that more needs to be done to help Ukraine.
The province and Ottawa are investing in a shift to green technology in Ontario's auto manufacturing industry. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Premier Doug Ford made the announcement this morning. Colin DeMillo has a story.
It is a significant shift propelled by two levels of government. The Honda manufacturing plant in Alliston is getting a $1.3 billion electric overhaul, including $250 million from taxpayers.
These investments will ensure Honda Canada builds its next generation models like hybrids right here in Ontario to be sold right across North America.
Over the past 2 years, the Ford government has been throttling up spending related to electric vehicles, responding to growing consumer demand and the manufacturing jobs that come along with it.
More and more people will look at alternative mobility and alternative technologies. That's what we're seeing when we ask our members in various studies that we do.
But while the government has been courting EV manufacturing, it's done little to incentivize people to actually buy the product. Ontario currently doesn't offer a rebate to make the switch, and the Premier suggests the province doesn't need one.
Since we've been in office, electric vehicles have tripled in sales.
Sales have indeed been rising without the rebates, but electric vehicles and hybrids made up just 8% of total sales in 2021. And the issue will likely come up during the election because other parties have pledged to revive the rebate.
We need to have, for now, a temporary purchase incentive. This year, there'd be about a $10,000 incentive for a pure electric car, not a hybrid, $5,000 for the hybrids that have longer range.
And what about charging stations, which are seen as key to incentivizing drivers?
Range has been one of the biggest factors, how far they can drive between having to charge their electric vehicle. And part of that is also the infrastructure to be able to charge your vehicle conveniently depending on where you are.
The Premier offered a tepid response.
As the market demands it, they'll continue putting the chargers throughout Ontario.
Meanwhile, other political parties are offering rebates for home EV charging stations, hoping to drive up demand and voter support.
Wyloo Metals is now officially the owner of Noront Resources, meaning the Australian company now owns the largest stake in the Ring of Fire. The acquisition came with a $616 million price tag. Nearly 99% of Noront shareholders voted in favor of the deal during a special meeting on Tuesday. The shareholders now still have 10 days to decide if they want to retain their shares or receive a cash offer from Wyloo. The sale includes the high-grade Eagle's Nest deposit, which has high amounts of nickel, copper, platinum, and palladium. Noront Resources expects the takeover by Wyloo Metals will be approved by the Ontario Superior Court of Justice in early April.
The City of Thunder Bay has announced that due to the warm weather, its outdoor rinks have closed for the year. The only exception will be the ice sheet at Prince Arthur's Landing that will remain open until Sunday evening. Impacts of Russian invasion of Ukraine are wide-reaching, and it may impact on the local shipping season, but it's still too early to say exactly how. Port of Thunder Bay CEO Tim Heaney says potash shipments are likely to increase, given that Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus are all major exporters of the substance, which is used in fertilizer. Grain exports, on the other hand, are dependent on the growing season and may not see a shift until the next harvest.
Was built to service Europe, the trading between Canada and Europe. So when those markets change, of course, you'll see some impacts on the seaway. So it's too early to determine what that'll be in its entirety, though.
Thunder Bay is the only load point on the Great Lakes for the potash, which is loaded at 2 terminals here. Heaney expects to see an increase in work hours and shipping traffic at those terminals.
Well, Fiona, another warm one.